We'll go ahead and get started.
Yes.
Okay. All right, there we go. Hi, everybody. It is Sharon Gowdy and Dee Dean here with the Office of Safe Environment for the Diocese. And can everybody hear us okay?
Yes.
Yep. Everybody doing okay?
Yes.
Is everybody connected okay? And you can see the PowerPoint slide and all of that kind of stuff. Everybody hearing and seeing okay?
Yes.
Great. Okay, then we are going to go ahead and get started. Today is November 8th, 2021, and the virtual PACE conference that you are attending today is specifically regarding safe environment. So what I'm going to do is what I usually do with safe environment, go over the requirements, just to remind you of the requirements regarding safe environment, and any all may have. Dee and I are a little bit excited because we requested hearing some feedback, and we'll get to that because we are considering our options for a different tracking and documentation mechanism as opposed to the ParishSoft SEP manager. So we are going to engage with you a little bit in that regard today as well. We'll do that toward the end of the presentation, and we'll take your questions and your feedback. So what's going to happen is I'm going to go through this and do my part, and then Dee will have a part to go through with you, and then we will kind of regroup and talk about some things there toward the end and entertain your questions. So Dee, if you want to go ahead.
Yep.
Thanks. So Dee is going to flip slides for me today. So safe environment is a requirement of every diocese in the United States. And not only is it a requirement, we are audited on it on a yearly basis and then on a 3-year cycle. So it is a requirement for all of our parishes and all of our schools. Offices of Safe Environment and the safe environment process entails background checks, awareness training, and distribution of and adherence to the diocese's sex abuse policy. 3 pieces constitute safe environment compliance. The background check for anyone who is working or volunteering, and the completion of awareness training for anyone who is working or volunteering, and receipt and review and sign off on that policy form for anyone who is working or volunteering. If you just have people coming to Mass and all they do is attend Mass, and they don't really do anything else in the parish, safe environment does not apply. It is for your employees and your volunteers. So safe environment is a priority for us in our diocese. And if you've been around at least since 2018 and forward, you know that we have been involved in a lot of legal activities relative to safe environment. So you, at your parish or school, you've got to make a safe environment a priority, you know, for many reasons. First and foremost, always for the safety of children, of course, but also in the event that something adverse does happen, and we need to report it and cooperate with civil authorities. We need to have all of our documentation in order. We need to be in compliance with our policies. And if you have ever been a party to any kind of a legal matter, one of the first things they're going to ask you for is Do you have your paperwork in order? Is this person in compliance with safe environment? So not
There we go.
only are we looking to have our volunteers and our employees compliant with the policy, not only does it have to be done, it's got to be done right. You got to do it correctly. So, and Dee will be expounding on that, and we will be expounding on that later on in the presentation. So again, the three components for safe environment: background check, awareness training, and sign off on and receive the sex abuse policy for our diocese. Three things, and a person is considered in compliance with safe environment upon successful completion of all three components. If you have the background check done, but not the awareness training and not the policy signed, you are not in compliance. If you've got training and background check, but you didn't sign the policy, you're not in compliance. You have to have all three components successfully completed. If any one component is missing, you do not have compliance. So you're looking for three things to be completed in order to achieve that compliance. This slide is one that I have not added to my presentation prior, but it is a very important slide. Please do not permit someone to work or volunteer prior to compliance being achieved, especially that background check. There are a whole host of problems and issues that ensue when you let someone volunteer or work and then their background check comes back after the fact and there are findings on it. That creates many difficulties for you at the parish and school level, as well as for us at the chancery level. Most background check issues are not going to make a person ineligible to volunteer or work. So if it is a sex offense that comes back on the background check, that is a no. We have a zero tolerance policy. So if it's any kind of sex offense finding that comes back on a background check, that's going to be a no. However, most things that come back on background checks are things like speeding or violations while you're driving. Maybe you didn't get your proper sticker, or you got pulled over, didn't have your proper insurance. DUI, we get a fair number of DUIs. We get a fair number of findings that do not necessarily preclude someone from working or volunteering, but nonetheless, we want to be aware of them. There are, however, times when background check findings come back and they're pretty significant, and they can impact where a person would be working or where a person would be volunteering. There may be issues where you don't necessarily preclude that person from working or volunteering, but there might have to be some parameters on their volunteerism or their work. So when you hire a person or permit a person to volunteer before you've seen that background check and before you know whether it's clear or if there are findings, before you know what they are, that can create a significant level of risk and liability. So please, please, please do not permit someone to work or volunteer until the process has been completed, especially that background check. We have a few platforms that we use to manage the safe environment process. Screening One is our background check service provider, and it's website based, and it's used in both our parishes and schools. Virtus is our sex abuse awareness training service provider, and again, used at both of our parishes and schools. Teaching safety is the Virtus program that we use for children, and Protecting God's Children is the program that we use for adults. Again, Screening One and Virtus in all of our parishes and all of our schools, that's all the same along there. Square 9 is a new tool that we are using here at the Chancery to process and digitize all of our policy forms. So when you send me your policy forms, we put them into Square 9, and then we have them stored electronically as well. Virtus and Screening One are platforms that store our records electronically, and now we have Square 9 to store our policy forms electronically as well. Square 9, you all out at the parish and school level don't have to worry about that one at all. It's completely managed here at the Chancery. We just want you to know it exists, and we do use it here to digitize the policy forms that you send us. Relative to tracking and documenting safe environment compliance, if you remember at the start of the presentation, I said, you know, I mentioned that we are working on establishing a new platform for tracking and documenting. And I mentioned also, you know, not only do you have to undertake the process and do the safe environment process, you also have to do it right. You got to do it to conclusion. And that means tracking and documenting compliance at the parish and school level once it's been achieved. And we know in our diocese that that is one step that people at the parish and school level are having a lot of difficulty with. So we are working to establish a new platform for tracking and documenting, and we'll talk more about that toward the end of the presentation. West Virginia reporting law is 24 hours. So if you come into knowledge of abuse or have evidence of abuse, or you have a valid concern, West Virginia law says you have to report it within 24 hours. The prior law was 48 hours. So if that's something that you are used to, please know that that's been revised just within the past couple of years here. West Virginia updated their law to include 24-hour reporting requirement. And again, this is not that particular requirement is not a diocesan requirement. It is West Virginia law. And so clergy and parish staff who work with children are all mandated reporters and are specifically actually mentioned in the code. There's a whole host of people who are mentioned in that revised code. Communications. When you are communicating with us at the Chancery, you should be using your parish or school's dwc.org email address, especially for safe environment. There are a lot of reasons why we do that, and it's super important. One being when we have to cooperate with civil authorities, being Child Protective Services or the police, or when there is a legal action, when there's a civil action involved, a lot of times we have to produce our documents, and it's a lot easier and more streamlined and a lot more convenient when we can just get on dwc.org and produce everything that we need to produce for the police or for the court system. And sometimes both, depending on who's asking. So going forward for your parish or your school, our primary communications are going to come to your dwc.org email that has been assigned to your school or your parish by the Chancery's IT department. If you don't know what your dwc.org email address or password you know, if you don't know what those are, please reach out to David Haynes at the Chancery, and he can get you squared away with that. But otherwise, that's, you know, that's what we're going to be using for official channels. Now, having said that, if you email me from an account that is not your dwc.org email, I'm going to respond. People email me all the time, and I do respond to emails, but for official communications, mass announcements, anything at all relative to the audit, anything at all relative to policy, the bulk of our communications, with the exception of when I'm replying to you, if you've sent me something, the bulk of our communications here at the Chancery for safe environment are going to come to that dwc.org email address. A couple of other things relative to communication and getting the word out. Please, if you're a parish, always remember to include the reporting language in your weekly bulletin. And we have a few different versions. So if you have a really big bulletin and, you know, with a lot of pages and a lot of information, perhaps you want to use the full announcement for reporting language. If you have a smaller bulletin, some parishes, their bulletin is, you know, maybe half a page. We have an abbreviated version that you can put into your bulletin. And that reporting language is just offering people the means of how and where they can report a concern or an issue if they need to. If you're a school, please feel free to include that reporting information in your newsletters or any kind of, you know, routine communication that you have with your parents and students. If you're a school and a parish, please display the safe environment posters in prominent, visible, high traffic areas for the parishes. Usually it's, you know, right there on the bulletin board as you come in the door there. If you have a parish center, please display it there. If you have a parish restroom, it's always a good idea to maybe, you know, display it in the restroom or on the door. If you're a school, you might put it in your main office. You might put it in your hallway. Again, restrooms, lunchrooms, wherever it is prominent to display and very visible in high traffic areas. And if you need posters for your parishes or schools, just email or call me. I can send them to you. It's very easy. We send them out via email in a PDF form in an 8.5 by 11. So you can print as little or as many as you need, as much as you want during, you know, throughout the year. If there is a change of status in your local level coordinator at your parish or school, please let us know. Sometimes if we have questions or things come up, it's just easier. It's easier for us and you if we know who is handling the safe environment process at your parish or school, so we can, you know, reach out to that person directly. For 2021-2022, the teaching safety program for children is happening like normal. So it's lesson 3 and lesson 4 for this school year. Now, last year, because of COVID, it was a little bit hectic and we didn't have a lot of people doing what they normally do. So last year was lesson 1 and 2. This year would be lesson 3 and 4. Now, under normal circumstances, generally the first lesson is taught by the end of October and the second lesson is taught by the end of the school year. So whichever lessons you're teaching in any given year, so the first one, for example, this year, lesson 3 should have been taught by the end of October. Lesson 4, the second lesson for this year, would be taught by the end of the school year. A lot of people this year, because COVID has remained a factor to some extent, a lot of people have just taught both of their lessons together in the fall. I know our schools are doing that, and some of our parishes are doing it as well. And so we support that. If you need to catch up from last year and you want to do lessons 1 and 2, as well as 3 and 4, we support that as well. It's been a little bit, of an unusual circumstance over the past couple of years here with the COVID. And so we understand that some of you might be catching up as well. I think we did pretty well in that regard with Zooming as an alternative. And so there are a few people out there who maybe need to catch up, but I think most everybody's okay. But please feel free to do lessons 3 and 4 together if COVID is still a concern in your parish. And again, I think the superintendent went ahead and mandated for our schools that both lessons go ahead and be taught together. So once you teach those lessons, remember to have your director of religious education if you're at the parish level, or whoever at your school is in charge of documenting. Remember to have that person log on to the Virtus system under the educators tab and record that training. And it's a very easy training to record. Once you log on to the Virtus system, you're going to get on the educators tab, click record training, and you're just entering very basic information. Who, what, where, when, how many people you trained, and how many opt out. So please remember also that we tell our parents everything that we're doing in safe environment, and they have the opportunity to opt out as well. So there's a letter that you send to them 2 weeks prior to teaching that lesson to give them the opportunity to opt out if they want to. And also a very important note regarding parents and their participation. Our parents, we are more than happy to have them review the lessons as well if they want to see what you're teaching their child as far as teaching safety goes. We are always happy. You're welcome to provide them with the lesson. You're welcome if they want to see it. You're welcome to speak with them in any way if they have any questions relative to teaching safety, or you can have them call my office, whichever they prefer. But we are always happy to provide those lessons to our parents in advance if they want to see what our children are being taught relative to Virtus and teaching safety for their kids. I get a lot of frequently asked questions that are very analytical and relative to the logistics of the process. And I'm hopeful that this next series of questions can guide you through managing and staying on task and organized. The paperwork that you keep on file for safe environment is that each employee and each volunteer, when we are audited, they're going to be looking for 3 pieces of paper: the background check form, a Virtus certificate of completion, and a signed policy form for each person at your parish or school who is a volunteer or an employee. The easiest way to store the forms is to create a folder for each person, put their name on it, and put the 3 pieces of paper in it and store it in alphabetical order in a secure file cabinet. Some of our smaller parishes and schools keep that paperwork in alphabetical order in a 3-ring binder. That's fine. However your parish decides to store the paperwork is absolutely fine with us, as long as it is organized, easily retrieved, easily audited, and secured. The storage of the data in a tracking platform online, again, is something that we will discuss as we move toward the end of the presentation. Historically, we have used the ParishSoft Safe Environment Program Manager to store our data in a tracking platform online, which historically has entailed entering the dates of completion for the background check, the sign off on the policy form, and the completion of Virtus. That's what we've done historically. We're looking at options that may be easier for you to use. And again, we'll talk about that later toward the end of the presentation. But just know that those folders or that binder, that's an important part, but you also have to store that data in a tracking platform online. We need that data stored digitally as well and documented digitally as well. Safe environment paperwork is meant to be kept indefinitely. Allegations of abuse and legal action can arise decades later. And we know this especially from the release of the lists. We've had some allegations as far back as 50 years. We've had some, as recent as 10 or 20. So best practice nationwide for safe environment record storage is to store them indefinitely. Now, having said that, you don't have to keep records that are 50 years old mixed in with your current records. So what we advise people in our parishes and schools is that you want to keep up and maintain your files. Your current files should be your current volunteers and your current employees. Anyone who eventually resigns, moves on, dies, or simply no longer volunteers, you can certainly move their paperwork from your active files to a no longer active file. For example, in my office at the Chancery, I have a space where I've got all the priests and deacons and seminarians who are active. And then in one of my other drawers, I've got all of my files for my priests, deacons, and seminarians who, for whatever reason, have moved on, retired, died, or whatever is their circumstance, they're no longer active. Then I've got that space where I keep my inactive. Again, as long as your records are organized and easily retrievable, should an allegation or a legal action arise. A lot of people ask me, how do I, who's our local level safe environment coordinator? A lot of people will call my office and say, Sharon, who's our local level safe environment coordinator? And I say, well, I don't know, you tell me, because that's up to you all. That's up to your priest and your principal to designate a local level safe environment coordinator at your school or your parish. And so that's going to be up to the priest or principal, with the priest having the final say. And that person is going to be a person who has pretty good organizational skills, pretty good technology skills, is a confidential employee, because sometimes what we deal with in safe environment are investigations, especially with civil authorities that require a level of confidentiality. We deal with personnel matters that require a level of confidentiality. So that is up to your priest and or your principal, if you're a school, with the priest together, to determine who the local level safe environment coordinator is. Sometimes it is one person, sometimes it's a job share and it's two people. Whatever works for you at your parish and your school is what we at the Chancery are happy to accommodate, as long as that person has a very clear understanding of the process and what is required, and has the capabilities and the level of discretion and professionalism that's needed when you're handling sensitive matters. Background checks. How often do we run background checks? This is a great one. So background checks are run on priests, deacons, and seminarians, Catholic school principals and teachers, and DREs every 3 years. All other volunteers and employees are background checked every 5 years. The priests, deacons, and seminarians, we are most heavily audited on. So I run those background checks out of my office at the Chancery. I handle all the priests, deacons, and seminarians for their compliance and their background checks. So if you ever need to know about a priest, deacon, or seminarian, if you ever need to know about their compliance, just call me. Everybody else, principals, teachers, DREs, employees, and volunteers, those are all run at the local level at the parish or school by the designated local level safe environment coordinator. And it's 3 years for your teachers, principals, and DREs, and it's 5 years for everybody else. Speaking of renewals, Virtus in our diocese is one time live or online, and you are done for employees or volunteers. We do have some continuing education for our priests, deacons, seminarians, Catholic school principals, Catholic school teachers, and DREs. And they are required to complete the monthly Virtus training bulletins, as well as the initial module. But everybody else is just the initial module one time and they are done. And if you look at the pattern there, our folks who are more engaged with our students in deeper, more frequent ways, priests, deacons, seminarians, principals, teachers, they are held to a little bit of a higher standard. They're background checked more frequently, and they've got those monthly training bulletins because those are the people who are on the front lines primarily with our youth every day. During an audit, it can be a little bit stressful. Every year we are audited. We participate every year in what's called a data collection audit. You know that if you are familiar with working with safe environment, you know that you hear from me every spring and I want to know your numbers. I usually send you a form. Since COVID, we've been doing it via email. That has worked so well that we are going to continue doing it by email into the future. So every spring you receive an email from me and I need you to report your numbers back to me. And this includes the number of employees and volunteers who are in compliance, as well as the number of children who completed the teaching safety lessons in any given year. And it's pretty straightforward. We're tracking your numbers and we're tracking your data. Every 3 years, we are on-site audited, and the USCCB sends out auditors who randomly pick parishes and schools in our diocese, and they actually come into your parishes and schools and they look to determine and see if you're following the safe environment protocol of regular background checks, completion of Virtus, and completion of policy forms. They will come into your parish and school and they will actually open up your files and look to see if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. They will come to the Chancery and look at our online platform for tracking and documentation and see if you are entering your data to prove compliance into the software platform. That is all every 3 years. And they are looking to see if the information that we have in the online platform at the Chancery level matches the physical files and records in your school and parish. A lot of times I will get phone calls from people who are in crisis, and they will call me and say, oh my gosh, so-and-so has made a disclosure of sex abuse. So-and-so has told me they were abused. What do I do? And this is a very common question that I get, especially summer camps, vacation Bible schools, activities at school that may present an opportunity for a child to disclose to someone at school. This happens frequently. And sometimes it may be related to something or someone at church or school, or sometimes it has absolutely nothing to do with church or school. It's happening in the home, or it happened long ago somewhere else, not even related to church or school. But nonetheless, that person is coming forward with a disclosure. So what do you do? First and foremost, remain calm, especially if the person who's disclosing is a child. It's very important that you remain calm, that you listen with a calm and reassuring demeanor and offer, words and actions of support to the person disclosing. It can be very upsetting for someone to finally get to the point where they are disclosing. That can be very emotional. So you want to make sure that you remain calm and listen carefully and offer support. The harder part comes when you may have to, depending on what they've disclosed and depending on the circumstances, you may have to report to the appropriate civil authorities, absolutely. And if a crime has been committed, you can promise the person dignity and discretion, but you cannot promise them secrecy. So, and you should never promise someone secrecy relative, to safe environment. You want to make sure that you are following the law. And especially if you think someone might be in immediate danger, you're going to want to report to civil authorities as quickly as possible. Remember that 24-hour reporting requirement. And so always, first and foremost, we report to civil authorities, whether that's the police or whether that is Child Protective Services for the state of West Virginia. That's going to be our number one priority, is getting that matter reported within the 24-hour window according to West Virginia law, and especially as soon as possible if you believe someone's in immediate danger. We also ask that you notify the Office of Safe Environment. In my office at the Chancery, we track a lot of things. And sometimes if you have an issue that has come up at your parish or school and you call me and let me know about it, a lot of times I already have a record of the history there, and we can help you navigate through that situation. So we always ask that you also please notify the Office of Safe Environment by calling me, and that's my direct dial on the slide there. But first and foremost, of course, either the police or Child Protective Services. But please do call my office, because a lot of times, a lot of people, sometimes there are people out there who it's not always very clear cut right away what they're doing. But if you call and express your concerns, we can document those and start building a file. And then in the event that something does happen that's reportable and we are needing to cooperate with the police or Child Protective Services, we've got that history that is well documented and able to help civil authorities as they navigate these situations with people as well. Not only us, but with them. We completely cooperate in safe environment with Child Protective Services and with the police, in whatever the jurisdiction is. So it's also important that when you have something going on, please call us as well. And if you have questions and you're not sure whether a crime has been committed, or you're not sure if it's a reportable offense, or you're just not sure what to do at all, call us and we can help navigate you through the situation. We have the resources to help you navigate. some more logistics as to what do you keep at the parish or school? What do you send to me? It's pretty easy. Background check, keep it on file at your parish or school. Don't send it to me. Virtus certificate, keep it on file at your parish or school. Don't send it to me. If you need a copy of someone's Virtus certificate for your files, give me a call and I'll send it to you. The policy form, this is where it differs. You're going to keep a copy of that on file at your parish or school and send the original to me at the chancery. And that's it for your paperwork. Oh, here comes the best part. Change just ahead. So we are to the point in the presentation where we're going to chat about use of the current ParishSoft Safe Environment Program Manager platform. And, we're considering different means to track and document safe environment compliance. So a couple of things that we are looking at. ParishSoft is in the process of revamping their Safe Environment Program Manager. So it's going to look completely different and have a lot more features than what you've been used to seeing if you've been using the system at all. So we've got some things going on in our diocese. We've got some people who are using the system and they're doing very well to track and document. We've got a lot of people who hate the system and they are using it sometimes, but not as much, not nearly as much as they should be. And we've got some people who are like, you know what? I hate that SEP and I'm just not going to use it at all. So what we are looking at is we are trying to find a solution that would, number one, be more user-friendly for you all out there in the parishes and schools. And number two, we are looking at options that more of you would be likely to use. So ParishSoft, the SEP program manager in ParishSoft, they're revamping their program manager. And we could, very easily just keep on using that with the new interface. That's one option. Number two, Dee Dean is a wizard with our databases, especially with ParishSoft, and she has found a couple of ways where we could track safe environment compliance right within each person's record in the family suite. Is that correct, Dee?
Yes, it'd be under the member tab under the family.
Okay, so there are a couple options where you could just enter that in one of the boxes. We can customize that box a little bit, and you can enter the 3 dates using that particular path. The last thing we are looking at is that Virtus, over the past 18 to 24 months, Virtus, our awareness training provider, has really developed their software platform to include an area where you can track safe environment compliance. And also, if you're a local level coordinator, like you could go on to the Virtus platform, record your compliance, and I believe also access certificates if you need them. And furthermore, Virtus has integrated the Virtus system with the Screening One system, which is also, as you know from the beginning of the presentation, our background check system. So that's what we are looking at on our end. And I want to ask Dee to please proceed with this presentation as to what to do in the meantime. And then once Dee is done, I want to come back and I want to hear from you all as to maybe some of your thoughts on these options. So Dee, go, if you would like to carry on, and then we'll open this up for discussion.
Alrighty, Sharon. Like Sharon said, we found out in the spring that Parasoft was going to be changing their platform, and it was going to a completely different platform. We have had a chance to get a sneak peek of it. There's things I like, there's things I don't like. Similar to how the current Parasoft system is right now. There's things we like, there's things we don't like. But if we're going to have to do new training and do some maintenance to our data, let's make sure that we're using the best product possible. As the slide shows, that there was a lot of lack of utilization of Parasoft. This is really important that we're putting these dates in to our online system. Was a couple months ago, there was a parish that suffered a fire. If something like that would happen and you would lose all your documentation in a fire or in a flood or some other kind of tragedy like that, this is your backup. These are our dates that we can at least have something to go on if we would have a lawsuit to show that we did do our part. So it's very important that we're putting everything into this platform. Like Sharon said, there's a couple different options we're looking at. Each comes with its own little things, like the new Parasoft system. Our data would roll over, but it would be all new training. We found some other little places that we may be able to record dates, but then it also may involve using IQ to pull your reports. So there's some different things we're looking at, and we also have the Virtus option. So we're trying to find the easiest solution for you guys, something maybe that is not so many steps into having to document your date, something where you can just go straight to it and put your dates in. But we're working on that, and we will be reaching out to probably some of our more seasoned people to kind of get their opinion on too, as we get closer to making a decision. But that's where we stand on that right now. As Sharon has here, you are required to keep the paper forms and the online platform. So like I said, you never know what could happen. If we have it stored online, that's a good backup to your paper form. But until then, we are still using the Parasoft system as it currently is. Everything that you've been doing can be found in the field guide, which is online. It's on our DWC webpage. The site is listed there that you can go to. It has screenshots and it walks you through the entire safe environment process. Nothing new there. Everything's the same as it's been. So we're just going to continue doing that until we find out what we're going to do. And we don't have the exact date of when Parasoft is making the change, but that's going to have a big determination on when we roll out something new. So in the meantime, just keep doing what you're doing as the policy is in our field guide. I do want to specify a few reminders. Please, please, please be careful of duplicate records. We're still getting a lot of duplicate records being created. Parishes with schools, that's where I see a lot of them. The parish creates a record, the school creates a record. We need to make sure we're using that shared record and importing the record from the other location and sharing the content, so we're not getting multiple records all for the same person. We want to make sure that we are entering everybody into our Parasoft system, all of our volunteers, our catechists, school staff, maintenance people. We want to make sure that we're putting them into your managed staff, because if they're not in your managed staff, they will not transfer over to your SCP manager. So please make sure that you're putting everybody in there that is volunteering at your parish or school. When we're entering dates in our SCP system manager, whichever system we go to, this is going to be something that you're going to have to do is please put the dates that the people sign the forms. Not the date that you are entering into the system. We want the date that's on the form, that they're actually acknowledging it. On background checks, currently, in our Parasoft system, it asks for the date from the application, and it also asks for the date that the background check comes back as being cleared. So you have to put both dates in there. That is really big on background checks. So many times people put in the date of the application and they forget to go back to double check that that background check came back cleared. So we always want to make sure we're putting that date in. And we want to make sure that we're doing maintenance on a regular basis. Make sure you're going in to your SCP manager and checking to see if you have those green check marks. See if you have any background checks coming due, or if you're missing a Virtus certificate. Go in, depending on how large of a database you have, will determine how often you need to do this. Larger locations will have to do this more frequently, but we want to make sure that we're keeping everything up to date. And I just want to go a little further into maintenance. A few things that we need to make sure to do is making sure we're keeping the contact information up to date in Parasoft. There's a lot of bad data in our system right now. A lot of times, you know, someone will come, their address gets put in and never gets updated. Phone numbers never get updated. Schools, I know you keep a lot of your information in RunWeb. If your person is notifying you that they are moving at the school, make sure you're going into Parasoft and updating that information. We also have a lot of issues with in our managed staff is people are good about putting the assignments in, but when people leave, they never go back in to say that they have left. We have some parishes and schools that have thousands of volunteers in their database right now because they have not gone in to end date those. Currently, all you have to do is go into manage staff, and you're going to go to that person, and you're going to put a date. There's a place that has a start date and an end date, and then you're just going to remove that as being their primary assignment when they leave. That's all you have to do, and that takes them out of your SCP manager. So that way, when you go in, and you won't see nearly as many red X's or yellow yield signs that you're missing information, because those people are no longer with you. To go a little further with that, once someone leaves your school, leaves your parish, make sure you're going to the family record and changing their member or their family status. We want to change them to inactive, unregistered, move, switch parish, whatever applies. Just make sure we never delete any information. That's something that's very important. We want to keep that history. Parasoft is our backup for everything that goes on. So if you're deleting information, then we are not able to pull that up at a later date if we would need to. And last, we want to make sure we're helping each other out, especially schools and parishes. If you have a family that you know is going to be going to the school and they filled out their safe environment forms, make a copy and send it over to the school, because they're going to need to have a copy of that too. Same thing with a school. If you have somebody that is new and they're going to be joining the parish, make a copy of the forms and send it to them. Grade schools, if you have a 8th grade class that's going off to high school, run those forms through a scanner to the local high school that you have, local Catholic high school. That way they have them. We don't want to alienate our families. Sometimes if they kind of start questioning things when they have to say, you know, I need to fill out this form. And they say, well, I just filled it out last year at the parish. And we don't want to have to keep running background checks all the time when they're good for 5 years. So if we share information, we're not, you know, making our families angry by constantly making them refill out this information, but we're actually like saving ourselves some time of running the background checks and the cost of running the background checks. So let's help each other out. Let's share some of these forms and work together, so that way we make sure we're all in compliance. So I'm not really going into much of the Parasoft aspect today because, like I said, nothing has changed and it will be changing in the future. So if anyone has any questions now, we can take those and I can address any specific Parasoft questions or any questions for Sharon you have. We can go ahead and take those. So Sharon, how would you like to proceed?
Well, the only other thing I would like to add before we take any questions
Okay.
is a lot of times Dee and I will get a question, how do we know who should be safe environment compliant? And so we go back to those very clear parameters. If they're a volunteer or if they're an employee, and especially if they come into contact in any way with children, they're going to need to be compliant. So you've got to think of your parish or your school. Who volunteers for lunch? Who, first of all, at your parish or school, who's employed? Who are you paying? And then if they're volunteering at your school, maybe they do lunch. Maybe you've got homeroom moms, you've got coaches, you've got sports, you've got field trips. Anybody who comes in and volunteers for that, anybody who comes into your school and, you know, you want to have a birthday party and the moms and dads want to come in for the birthday party, they've got to be safe environment compliant. At your parish, you've got your parish school of religion, you've got funeral committees, you've got greeters, you've got you know, people who do your snow removal, people who cut your grass, people who do luncheons and donut socials and fish fries and all of that kind of stuff. Think of all of the people at your parish and your school that are involved in parish and school life on a regular basis. And those people, you know, 99.9% of the time, they're going to come into contact with children at some point or another. So it's very important that you all sit down at your various locations and determine who are we applying this process to. And it's a far wider reaching net than you think. And so as Dee said, you know, your maintenance with keeping up on it, if you have a very big, robust parish or school, you're going to want to be looking at those records monthly. If you're a smaller parish or school, you're going to want to be looking at them quarterly. That would be my recommendation to keep up on. When school first starts up in the late summer and early fall, you're going to be really busy with safe environment. And then it's probably going to be a little bit quiet for a while. And you're going to want to still do, you know, depending on your size, your monthly or quarterly maintenance. So that's the only clarification I would like to make before we take your questions and or your feedback on moving to a new platform. So at this point, Dee and I are happy to entertain any of your questions, comments, observations, you know, whatever you would like.
And I do have the chat open if you feel more comfortable just typing it in chat, or you can unmute yourself and just ask the question.
Anybody? Now, I know you all have feelings about that Parasoft Safe Environment Program Manager.
My opinion about the Safe Environment Program is it's very difficult. It's not necessarily difficult to use. It's just very cumbersome. It's like you have to answer the questions and it takes forever to do anything. I just dislike it very much. If we could work something else out, it would be better. And I like the idea of using the Parasoft actual family program if we can. But that's my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's Bonnie. Bonnie, is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
Hi, Bonnie.
Everyone knows I have opinion about everything.
So Bonnie, so you would be more receptive to using a mechanism like maybe right inside the person's record in Family Suite.
Exactly.
Okay. Anybody else?
Hi, it's Bill.
Hi, Bill.
Hey, so did I understand that I should be able to see the certificates in the Virtus and be able to print them out?
If
Or
we
are-
go, to using Virtus as our new tracking platform, that would be something that we're looking into being able to do.
We think
Um,
so. We're lining up, we're trying to line up a presentation. Dee and I are looking to line up a presentation with Virtus probably in the next week or two to see what all features, but from what we think, yes, you would be able to get in there and print your own certificates if you need them. We think.
That'll save you a lot of time for me.
It would. Yes, it would. Yes, sir.
Sandy says that she liked the life events feature in Parasoft. That is one of the areas we're looking at. The thing that we're having playing around with is the reporting on that, to getting the reports to come out the way we want them, so that way you get notifications of when background checks expire. So that was one thing with the life events that we are playing with. There was another secured fields area that currently you are not seeing that we are also playing with. Those are both in the Parasoft members platform. The Virtus is, I like the Virtus because it has all the information all on one page. So you would have the person's contact information, their kind of like their role and their safe environment information all on one screen. I like having that instead of like the regular Parasoft where you have to create the record, then you have to go into manage staff, then you have to go into the SCP manager. It's all condensed on one screen. So that's something that I liked also. But like I said, we're playing around with a few different things, trying to make it as easy as possible.
But here's me with my opinion again. But I some of these smaller churches have got like one secretary that does everything.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right.
And just for me in particular, I deal with the money. So I've got Parasoft Giving. I
Mhm.
also do the screening one. I have Parasoft. I have the program to do my bulletin. I've got there's like 6 or 7 additional programs or different
Yes.
programs I have to go to. It would be nice if we could consolidate them into like 1 or 2, so that I don't have to go through all these different programs. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Understand exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
It
that's
just-
what we're trying to find, something as easy as possible. Even with using just the member feature, a lot of parishes don't have the IQ feature right now in Parasoft. So that's something new that they would have to pick up and be trained on. And so, the reports may be a little more difficult than how they are now. So we're weighing all that into consideration, trying to make it as easy as possible so that way it's not as time consuming and we can get more people using it.
I love IQ actually.
You do, I do too, but a lot of people don't.
And if you are out there and you're listening to us right now, and Sandy, I see where Sandy, yep. Dee, do you see what Sandy's saying in the
Yeah,
chat?
that's why I addressed it a
That's
little
what
bit
you,
ago. Yeah.
that's the same, okay. Okay, and so if you're out there and you would be interested in helping us, like by learning these features and seeing what you would need to do and giving us feedback on them, we would be interested in having people who can tell us, you know what, that'd be super easy for me, or no, I don't like that. So email us, please email either me or email D and we'd be happy to engage with you as we start down, you know, this path of figuring out what to do. We know the current SEP is not working. We know that it is not working for the overwhelming majority of our people out there in our parishes and schools. And so we want to, you know, we have to remedy that. And so if you're interested in helping us do that, please email us and let us know. Anybody else, any questions, concerns, anything for the good of the order? All righty, then I think our work here is done for today. Dee, do you?
I don't have
Anything
anything else.
All righty. Okay. Well, I would like to thank you all for joining us today for this session. And as always, if you have any questions, concerns, or issues relative to anything safe environment related, please reach out via phone or email. And, you know, we'll get you the help and advice that you need. We're always happy to hear from you. And hopefully sometime soon here in the near future, we will have a little bit of an easier solution for you on tracking and documenting your safe environment data. So thanks again, everybody. Stay safe and take care, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.